Hey everyone, Destin here with Fleet Feet Murfreesboro. Wanted to check in. Sorry this is a day late. Wanted to do this yesterday, but got tied up at work. So I wanted to send a quick little video and talk about our technique focus of the week. We're talking about foot strike. And I gave a little bit of a preface in the text message. This is one of the most widely talked about and debated topics when it comes to running. Now, you can easily go on social media, find an Instagram reel, a TikTok reel that's going to say the exact opposite of everything I'm about to tell you. And I think that's one reason why this area of foot strike is getting so much attention, is because the information out there is widely accessible, and little, if any, of it is actually backed by a lot of research. And the reason for that is because there's not a whole lot of research out there. So whenever we make these statements of this type of foot strike is better and this type of foot strike is worse, we want to be able to back it up with research, but unfortunately it's hard to study that. Another reason there's only a little bit of research is because there's so many different builds in terms of how runners are made, in terms of leg length, in terms of body composition, that what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another person. And that's the take-home message that I want you to hear from this, is when we're talking about foot strike, and really just about anything in terms of running form, it's going to vary from person to person. I said at the beginning of this program that I don't like to change the technique of how someone runs all at once, because you risk getting injured and because you start using muscles that your body's not used to using during running, or different muscles start taking the brunt of that impact while you're running. So that's why we've gone through a systematic approach. We've done one, maybe two things each week. We've talked about head up, shoulders down, relaxing those hands, engaging the core, hinging the hips, and foot strike is no different. I would say this is probably the one area where if someone changes how their foot lands when they run, they are most at risk for injury when they're working on this. So please, please, please be careful if you take anything from this video and decide to change the way that your foot lands. Let's go ahead and talk about just the basics. What are the different types of foot strike? Mostly we divide the foot up into three areas, and we can have a forefoot strike, which is landing more on the ball of your foot, a midfoot strike, which is landing more on the arch of your foot, and then a heel strike or a rear foot strike, and that's obviously landing more on the heel and rolling forward. So most runners probably fall into a heel striking category, and because of that, shoe companies, running coaches, Instagram influencers have targeted heel strikers as one of their audiences that they want to sell shoes to, audiences that they want to critique technique, things like that, because the majority of runners fall into that category. Is heel striking bad? Research doesn't really say, and honestly, heel striking, I care less about if you hit with your heel and more about where your foot lands in relationship to your center of mass, the rest of your body. Does it land close to up underneath your hips? Heel striking has gotten a bad rap because people will say, well, this can lead to shin splints, and some of that is true. But a lot of it is, it's better still for your foot to land how you're used to it landing, how you've been running, how you've been walking for the last 20, 30, 40 plus years, than it is to try to change that. More studies are coming out with elite runners that say most elite runners are landing on the middle of their foot. So would it be better if more amateur runners started running and trying to land on the middle of their foot, or less heel striking, more on the middle, or maybe even a little bit on the forefront? And the answer to that is probably not. When we're looking at elite runners, there's so many different things that are different about the way that they're running, namely their speed, their cadence, how long they're off the ground, their leg swing, their ground reaction force. All of these things are different from how you and I are running if we're just running for recreational purposes. And because of that, taking what they do for heel striking may not apply to us. So, what should you take away from this video? The biggest thing I want you to take away is, please don't go on Instagram, find one reel that says heel striking is bad, you shouldn't be heel striking, but rather take everything with a grain of salt. Even everything that I'm telling you, take it with a grain of salt, do your own research. I think the articles that I sent out on the text group do a decent job of trying to look at the research that's already out there. And just to summarize that article, because it got pretty deep into the weeds, one of the best ways that you can run is how you've been running. Now, where I change that a little bit is if someone is having frequent problems with injuries, then I think it's appropriate to look at the heel strike and say, okay, if the way that we're running right now seems to be causing issues, what can we do to change that? What I tell runners is if you're experiencing problems, and it depends on what those problems are, what we will first do is look at your cadence. Cadence, and we've talked about this a little bit, is how many steps per minute you are taking. There are all kinds of numbers that have been thrown around out there. 170 as a cadence tends to be the most popular number, but that is not a one-size-fits-all for someone to take 170 steps per minute, especially if you're walking, if you're using running walking intervals. That's going to be lower, and that's fine. But what I will do with the runner is, instead of saying let's pay so much attention to how your foot lands, I'll say let's increase your cadence when you're running. Let's try to take just a few more steps per minute, and usually that forces the foot to land instead of further out in front of you. Even if you're continuing to heel strike, that brings the leg back a little bit because you're increasing the number of steps that you take, and that helps it land underneath your center of mass or underneath your hips. That allows your body to absorb that ground reaction force a little bit better. It allows it to absorb that impact a little bit better if the foot is up underneath the body. So, taking away from this video, if you've been experiencing injuries, knees, hips, feet, sometimes it can be beneficial to try increasing your cadence. So how do you do that? I would not go out and make a conscious effort to try to take as many steps as fast as you can. On your next run, just pay attention to how many steps you're taking, and see if don't let it speed your pace up, but see if increasing the number of steps, even ever so slightly, even just by thinking it, you almost do it automatically, and see if that changes anything at all for you. Be very careful when you start to use accessory muscles, though. If you notice that some other part of your body is more sore than it normally is, or if there's something that's not normally sore that is, that means you're using different muscles than your body is used to using, and that's a caution flag. Anyway, I don't know if there's been any clarity in this video, but take away from this that it is a widely debated topic. Most of what we're saying is probably not backed by a lot of research because we just don't know just yet. They're starting to do more studies on Strava with amateur runners and elite runners, and that's promising. But at this point, we can't for sure say one type of heel strike, one type of midfoot strike, one type of forefoot strike is better than any other. Try increasing your cadence. Some people, if you have a smartphone, you can go into the Apple or the Health app, or if you have Garmin, if you have Coros, something like that, you can usually go into the app and look at your cadence, see what that number is. Don't look at that number if you're walking, or if you're walking and running. Look at it when you're just running, and look how close is it to 160, 170 or so. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. I certainly don't have all the answers whenever it comes to foot strike, but I can try to summarize the little bit of research that is out there, and the nerdy articles that I have been reading. Happy Tuesday. Sorry this is a day late, and can't wait to see you guys this Saturday.